Hi, welcome back to our Human Ecology project. As we all know, global warming and climate change are not distant threats. It's a present catastrophe unfolding in slow motion, one heat wave, one flood, one failed crop at a time. So today, Bill and I are thrilled to be able to share with you this genius friend of ours, the fabulous Gerard Bishop. And Gerard retired as a principal scientist with Queensland Government Natural Resources, where his team monitored the actual broad scale deforestation. He's done so many incredible things, but I'll give you just a short bio here. Gerard also co authored the Beyond Zero Emissions Land Use Plan. And this is a plan to take Australia's land use and agriculture emissions beyond zero. Gerard works with an NGO, World Preservation Foundation, and they focus on the deforestation, land degradation, and biodiversity loss. Now, since 2015, he's been working as an advisor to the Zero Emissions Byron project, and today Bill and I are going to discuss Gerard's paper released this year, so it's very exciting. Gerard, a big warm welcome to our Human Ecology project.
Yes,
Thank you,
lovely to be
Marlene.
with you.
Yes, and thank you, Bill. Yeah, thank you for inviting me. I'm excited to be with you today.
Oh, well, it's wonderful for us, and all our students and colleagues and friends and clients around the world are going to enjoy your presentation. So I'll hand you over to Miss Tara. We've split up some questions here for you and get the ball rolling.
Well, let's dive into the deep end here, right? Both you and Salish Rao have caused quite a stir, talking about uh, a different way of assessing the contribution of animal agriculture to global warming. And I wonder if you can just kind of put that together for us a little bit and address how did this problem start in the first place? What are we dealing with?
Yes, really good question, Bill. And just to preface this, this is hot off the press, if you like. We published two papers, one in October last year and one in March this year, and they're still getting a lot of traction because they're so unconventional,
Right.
but still hit the mark. So there's a lot of attention they're being gained. Both papers are in the top 5% of all publications in peer-reviewed journals in the attention that they're getting, the downloads, the readings, the references, and also the comments online in X and Twitter and so on. So
Yes.
this is like breaking news, if you like, but I'll try and break it down um, into the understandable language. And for that, I think I'll go back to the origin story of where this happened. See, I was working for Queensland government, and they're still doing it. They're still knocking down about 11 square kilometres of forest per day. That's about 2,700 acres, about 500,000 trees. That's just one state of Australia, 500,000 trees per day. And you can't help see that but be sobered by it. But the strange thing was, years later when I left government, I worked on the Beyond Zero Emissions Land Use Plan. And to do that, I delved into the dark arts, if you like, of national greenhouse gas accounting. And national greenhouse gas accounting rules or guidelines were developed 3 decades ago by the United Nations. And they're what every country uses to assess and compare their emissions. So I'm down in the in the details, and let me tell you, the spreadsheets that they use for these are so complex and so in depth that it almost does your mind in. But I'm down there looking along, and I'm discovering that the people who are driving the tree the land clearing that I was observing in my job, the industries driving that were actually being gifted offsets, right? And I mean, most companies these days, they have some sort of program to, uh, a lot of it could be greenwashing, but at least they're trying and they're planting trees over here to offset some of their emissions over here. Well, in the case of uh, uh, beef and sheep production, um, the emissions over here were being gifted the growth over there, you know, and that regrowth on other land that may have been cleared decades ago, that was almost forest, you know, big forest again, but was regrowing, they were gifted that offset.
Oh, wow.
So this made me think, what's going on? I mean, when you burn fossil fuels, most of the emission, more than half the emission, is actually soaked up by the biosphere, by growing vegetation and the oceans. So they're not gifted any offsets. Fossil fuels don't get it. Why is it that uh, industries that use the land for their production are gifted? So anyway, I put this in the Beyond Zero Emissions Land Use Report, and I actually did a paper in a peer-reviewed journal to back it up. This is a real head scratcher to me. So I published in a peer-reviewed journal. But back then, I didn't go for the leading for the toughest peer review, and there's a big difference in in the papers that get noticed due to the level of peer review. Like some peer review is very difficult to get through. In that's where I publish now. Published in the top tier of all journals, purely to get the tough peer review, to get the recognition, and that's what I've done. Anyway, so this offset business, you think, oh well, that's not such a big deal, is it? Like, I mean, deforestation here, regrowth over there. What's the real difference? But what it does do is it cancels out two-thirds of all the deforestation emissions. So it's not just a little thing. It's not a tiny sort of fraction that we're giving them. It's two-thirds of their emissions. And so this paper that I wrote we published in October, and then moving on to the published paper, the bigger paper that we published in March, taking that accounting plus two other new ways of looking at accounting, totally changed the outlook. But just that accounting alone, it's called net accounting. See, when you clear forest, what they do is they count the emissions minus the drawdown, and the drawdown's about two-thirds of it. So the net emission, what ends up in the atmosphere, is about one-third, and two-thirds is drawn back down. So it's a massive difference. And when you do that, this is really interesting. We worked on the best data available and the best science available, right? So we've now got data series that look at the gross emissions for land use, that is mostly for deforestation, going back to 1750. So that's what I did, year by year emissions in land use. How much of that it should have been counted but wasn't? And when you count the gross emission from land against the gross emission from fossil fuels, it turns out there's been more emissions from land than they have from fossil fuels. Isn't that interesting? So if you ask anyone in the street, what's the major cause of climate change? They'll say carbon dioxide, fossil fuels. Well, no. Weirdly enough, number one is land use emissions, deforestation. But no one knows that. And so what we did is we turned it on its head. And that's the kickback. Because this flaunts convention. Convention is simply the rules that were developed 30 years ago. But because we're questioning convention, this whole thing has changed. And you've got people who have devoted their lives to reducing fossil fuel emissions. They can't bear this. It's really hard to understand what's going on. So they just reject it. And so you've got that happening right now. You've got that creative struggle, if you like. There are people in that field, in the field of in the the leading scientists in land emissions. They fully support gross emissions, and you've got other people in the field of fossil fuel emissions who think it's absolute rubbish. So you've got this tension going on, and in science, of course, there's publications and there's debate and it's ongoing. But and I know there's some heated debates behind closed doors being had at the moment. But even if you forget about convention, even if you forget about convention altogether, just think about the industry that caused that deforestation. Is it right to give them carbon offsets? I would argue no, even whether it's convention or not. That's not right. Okay, so that's number one. That's the major, if you like, stone in the pond that's creating all these ripples. So the science is developing as we speak, so to say. But if you like, I can go on to the other two aspects that I've
Yeah,
used in my
absolutely. I
work.
just
I just
wanted
I
to
just
say,
had one quick question here. Sorry. Would you consider those offsets as being subsidies?
Yes,
So
certainly,
these are so,
absolutely.
so these are governmental subsidies.
Yeah, yeah. It's the government saying we'll forgive you this amount of carbon
Yeah, yeah,
for your deforestation. We'll forgive you,
right, right.
uh, I think,
which is
yeah, we all know like governments and capitalists have created this world where everyone has to keep running the rat race, right? There's no time to stop or pause to
mm,
think. It's just keeping going. But it's interesting what Gerard's saying. It's very similar to what we feel with the diet aspect of, the what we come across as well, the nonsense, and there's a huge rise in carnivorism again and blah blah blah. So yeah, we're all in it together, Gerard, and as we always say, everything's connected. So all us people, we use our voices, we use our passion, and for you, Bill, and I respect hugely that your tireless work. It's nothing short of heroic because we know, like us, we're up against the wall all the time, but you're living testimony to what true climate leadership looks like, and we really applaud you for that.
thank you, Marlene. Yeah, actually, it's fascinating because once you once you scrutinise that at that level, you look at the I call it the dark arts of greenhouse gas accounting. Once you do that and get down in the engine room and where they count the things and open that book and unfold that net accounting into gross accounting. What's the full emission? What's the full drawdown? That reveals amazing things. It not only does it triples the value of the carbon cost rather of deforestation. It triples the value of retaining the forest, but it also exposes the full. On the flip side, it exposes the full amount of drawdown that nature has been doing without our understanding, without our knowledge. And when you look at it, it's massive. It's way more than all the fossil fuels we've released. If you look at the drawdown, the total drawdown by the biosphere is, well, what draws down carbon is photosynthesis. So plants, basically, and those plants are on the land and in the ocean. And that's the start of the chain. And there's also carbon dioxide just dissolves because it's soluble in the ocean water. But if you look at all of that drawdown, since 1750, nature has drawn down three-quarters of all emissions, both fossil fuels and deforestation. So nature's been pedaling like crazy under the table. You don't even see it. But nature has been struggling to keep up, and in recent years is falling further behind. And right now, nature is about 30 years, only 30 years behind, drawing down all our emissions. So if we were to put a stop to deforestation emissions and fossil fuel emissions now, in 30 years' time, nature will have sucked all of that up again. So, and we would have been back to pre-1750 atmosphere. So, there's a lot of variables in that as well. But that gives you some idea of the power of nature that has been previously hidden, and it's revealed when you do this full accounting, gross and against net. So, yeah. Would you like me to go on to the next two steps
Yes,
that rather rock the boat?
please.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, we got a whole list of questions here as well, but no, we'd rather you just
Yeah.
continue because you're filling in the blanks for everybody that's not on board with what we do, Fantastic. Great.
Sure, yeah, yeah, and it actually helps me every time I try to explain this. I
Yeah.
mean, I've got six grandkids, and so I know it's how much of a challenge it is to communicate. What are you doing, Papa? And you got to explain yourself. So I'm trying. I do try and do my best to
Yeah,
put
no,
it in layman
your
terms.
explanation is fantastic. It's like storytelling and it's very easy for people to listen in and understand this.
Mm.
Exactly, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, well, so the second part of the work that we did, and by the way, none of the three advances in climate accounting, none of them are new. Like the biodiversity people had been arguing for gross accounting for many years, and some of the global vegetation modeling people arguing for global accounting of deforestation. So that's not new science. The second thing is a thing called effective radiative forcing, just climate science, the best that we've got right now. That's not new science. And the third thing is adding in the cooling emissions, and that's been studied well by other people. So what we've got is these three things. They're not new, right? All I've done is put the three together, and the putting the three together is new, and doing the actual sums on emissions from deforestation, and how does that affect the sectors? What human activities are responsible for present day global warming? And that's the question that I've answered with all of this work. What is it that we've done that has caused present day global warming? And this is interesting. So I'll talk about the second thing, which is a little bit technical, but hopefully we can get through it. Right now, 30 years ago, the United Nations decided, how do we compare these gases? How do we compare carbon dioxide that might live in the atmosphere for hundreds of years? How do we compare that warming to methane, which only lives 10 years in the atmosphere before it's gone? How do we compare that to nitrous oxide, which lives 100 years? How do we compare that with all the other things, halocarbons and all the rest of it? So what they did is they devised a way of assessing the warming from each gas and how they compare gas to gas. And they came up with this metric called global warming potential. Now, you may have heard that before, global warming potential. And the argument that has been common, it's divisive, you see, because it's just about impossible to compare gases. using global warming potential, because global warming potential has to come with a bracket at the end, and that bracket is over what period you measure. So if you have, so what the United Nations decided was, let's use global warming potential, and 3 decades ago, climate change wasn't as in your face as it is now. So they decided, okay, 100 years. That's sort of like the timeline that we're expecting to have to make changes in our lives. So we'll take global warming potential over 100 years, and that's the convention. That's the rule in the rule book. Everyone will abide by that. And that's the one that all nations use to compare their gases, to assess their gases, and offer up to the United Nations each year for them to do a global inventory of all emissions. So global warming potential is contentious because you've got people like Salish Rao who argue that 100-year global warming potentials is useless because that's 10 times more than methane lasts. And then you've got others who in the industry who are saying, no, 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 methane's not important. It's only here for 10 years, so you can almost forget it. But the thing is that what they develop now, I mean, climate change science has developed leaps and bounds in the last 30 years. And the best metric we have now, the best way we can compare and evaluate the warming from each gas is this measure called effective radiative forcing. Now, what this does is it looks at the latest models for the atmospheric, how it works in the atmosphere, atmospheric chemistry, how gases that are emitted break down into other gases or water vapor. Methane, for example, it breaks down into tropospheric ozone, which is also a greenhouse gas. It breaks down into carbon dioxide, which is also a greenhouse gas, and into water vapor and a couple other things as well. But the water vapor is also a strong greenhouse gas. So how do you account for that? Right now, global warming potential, it is counted, but only in a little way. The effective radiative forcing fully counts the impact of all gases, and it uses a four-dimensional model of the atmospheric chemistry. So this is the best science we have on determining what heating has come from each gas and how much heating and how we compare gases. So if you do that, if you look at all the CO2 emissions since 1750 and all the methane emissions since 1750, you find that if we had used global warming potential over 100 years, we would have underestimated methane's warming by a factor of 3. That's no small difference. So the best science we have, effective radiative forcing, I'll give you the full name. It's called emissions-based effective radiative forcing, and it's published by the CSIRO. Published by the IPCC, the United Nations. It's out there, accepted science. If you compare that to using GWP, methane has caused 3 times more warming than had we used global warming potential over 100 years. So you can see how the choice of metric, the simple choice of metric, has such a big effect on how we compare gases. Okay, so that's the second aspect of what I did. The third aspect is actually really simply explained, and that is that when we burn fossil fuels, we also release, along with the CO2, we also release all these aerosols. And these aerosols, if you've ever been to a big industrial city, you can see them. The air sort of hangs with this grey smog, and it irritates your sinuses and your eyes, and it's very highly reflective of the sun's rays. And so these aerosols, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides, and others, these aerosols have actually caused cooling. In fact, it's so strong, this cooling, that it has masked out or prevented three-quarters of the warming from fossil fuels. Massive, massive cooling. So if you think about it, we've been running this climate change experiment on planet Earth. It's a grand experiment. We've been doing it for, well, centuries now. But we've now proven that humanity can change the climate.
It's incredible. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, we should all stand up and take a bow. By the way, Gerard, I have to say, you took us through the significance of methane so perfectly, right? A 5-year-old,
Okay.
all your grandkids could understand that, no problem. No, I mean, it's just unbelievable. And Bill and I talk daily as well about when do we think these governments are going to stop ceasing subsidizing animal agriculture, because that's the
Mm.
number one issue. That's what we have to get stopped, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, so just to complete that last one, within this climate change experiment, we've been running a geoengineering experiment with all the aerosols, and they prevented zero point 0.9 of a degree centigrade warming. So when you look at the combined impact of all warming, it's given us just over, well, about 1.5 degrees of warming now. But when you bring that down to um, sectors, what sectors have caused what warming, and it works out that fossil fuels, because of the strong cooling, has actually caused 18% only of present day global warming, just 18%, and agriculture has caused 60%, and 53% comes from animal agriculture. That is 3 times more than fossil fuels.
Wow.
Right.
So, and the others are waste and forestry, etc. So, and industry, that's 5%. So this, well, those three things, the recalculating emissions based on real emissions from deforestation, not net, using effective radiative forcing rather than this GWP, and adding in the cooling emissions published by IPCC. It's all best relevant data. It's all there. Thank you.
Yeah.
Put it all together, and we find that agriculture is the biggest sector for climate change by a long shot. So animal agriculture is so easily identified as the major influence on current day global warming, and it's just leaps and bounds ahead of anything else. So I've taken existing science, known data, and all published, the best science there is, and all I've done is I've veered away from the rule book, the rules that have been misguiding us, misleading us. So there you have it.
Well,
Amazing.
yeah, you're a genius, I mean, Bill and I were saying the other day that there just seems to be no urgency. Why is the world still sleepwalking towards collapse? What is it they don't see, They look out their window, they watch the news. Anyway, Bill,
Yeah.
sorry, I interrupted you
I,
there.
I find it interesting. There's an analogy here for which I don't want to create a new conspiracy theory, but when you look at healthcare, for instance, and you look at the provable fact that it's the consumption of animal sourced foods that are the main contributor to most of the non-communicable diseases, heart disease and diabetes, etc. And that's there, but medicine completely digs its heels in to resist going in that direction, even though the science is there. And I'm just thinking when you were speaking there, so many of the environmental groups, organized environmental groups, are so invested in either innovation, coming up with new technologies, right, uh, or defending current behaviors that they refuse to look at something like animal agriculture. And that is something that's always completely blown my mind. Looking at environmental groups that just absolutely resist. They dig their heels in around making behavioral changes, if you will, around it. So they want to see the result, but they don't want to support the behaviors that would do that. And so it's just a fascinating phenomena. I'm listening to you talk about this. I'm sure a lot of the people in the environmental movement really don't like these numbers that you're coming up with at all, because they're so invested in the whole fossil fuels thing, which I'm saying, so we should use fossil fuels probably less than we do, just from the air
Absolutely.
pollution point of view. Forget about global warming for a moment, which is a sacrilege right there. But just in
Yeah.
terms of the quality of air that we breathe, uh, it's just an amazing dichotomy.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely right, Bill. We need to get rid of fossil fuels. There's no question about
Yeah.
that. And it's happening, but way slower than we would have thought. But yes, this has really ruffled a lot of feathers.
Mm.
There are some signs, there are some NGOs, some environmental organisations that are running with this as well. Like, although they're not quoting my numbers yet, things like the global the drawdown project. Um, you know, they're right behind the issue about changing diet, protecting forests. Um, but many of them, yes, they're so invested. Well, I mean, what's that saying that people who people won't understand you if their job depends on them not understanding
Right.
you.
Well,
Very,
oops.
very true, very true. That's
and
very
that's
true.
and that's really the thing that really needs to be looked at, is that a lot of the
Mm.
really really well-intended uh, people, both in healthcare and in the environment, etc., when they get so locked into something that has a big sentimental appeal to people, which
Mhm.
is good for fundraising, they refuse to give it up if contrary information comes into play.
Mm.
What Bill and I do, Gerard, with the Human Ecology Project, we create these short videos. We shoot videos together, and we design a workbook. So the research is all, all the science is there, and we put it together, and it's packaged for the kids or the pupils or even communities to download these workbook videos. So it could be a 15-minute video on water. It could be a 15-minute video on the soil, what's happening. And then the workbooks, we design them really beautifully, and people are taking that on board. So we're breaking things down into different components. For us, the ocean, Bill grew up, the ocean was on his doorstep, and for him, it's more devastating as well. Not that it's not devastating for me, but, he's 83 years young now. He looks like a boy, right?
That's
And
right.
when we're out and we're visiting the ocean as well, we just think so. Gerard, I know you've covered a lot, but I would just love to see maybe just talk us through the role of oceans and the fishing industry in this huge problem.
Yes, oceans have been, of course, our garbage tip forever,
Yeah.
and we're starting to see the results of that now. Um, if and of course the fish that we eat, we've eaten them basically. The fish that we eat, we've got rid of 80 to 90% of them. I mean, if for any casual observer of the fish market, you'll see that the species of fish that are available often changes. And the change is due to, oh, well, we've outfished that one, so we've gone after another one. in Australia, I noticed a little while back there was this new species that came on in the markets called orange ruffy.
Right. Yeah.
And yeah, now orange ruffy is a massive 100 kilo plus deep sea fish, lives for over 100 years. And now you're flat out buying orange ruffy. I mean, though, what a magnificent animal.
Yeah.
Lives longer than we do.
Yeah.
And yet, bang, we pick on it and it's gone. But yes, we've been ploughing the world's the ocean continental shelves, destroying ecosystems there. We've been now acidifying the oceans. I used to work when I was young on the Barrier Reef as a surveyor, and it was just an amazing wonderland, took your breath away. But now it's dead again. We've had another bleaching, that's death event. So when you look at the coral now, that see the Great Barrier Reef is 2,500 kilometres long. It's massive, and the northern section is rarely touched. Not many people go up there. But and there's this island called Lizard Island where there's a research station and there's a lagoon, which is just the most amazing, full of life, or was. It's now dead, gone. Giant clams, more than a metre long. Um, it just
Yeah,
boggles my mind to what we can do to our oceans.
yeah, it's incredible. It's
And
incredible.
it's a bit confusing too because this is not something new. I mean, my part of my family were fishermen, commercial fishermen, and they knew in the 1950s. I can remember my grandfather saying in the 1950s, "So this industry's done on the California coast. So we're fishing them out. There's
Mm.
there's no control over it, and some of the Japanese big ships that were processing the fish on board the ship, the freezer ships, were coming closer and closer into shore. So it's been out there always. And we just don't. We're just really thick in the head, aren't we, as a species? We tout ourselves on our great intellect, but we do things that are so bloody stupid
Yeah,
continually. And
yeah.
it's interesting because I wonder, one of the things that comes up for us quite often is we wonder when, because all of these things the things you're talking about, the things that we're talking about, which are the same things really, are all based around our economic model. We can't just keep having growth, 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 and sustain it no matter what kind of preventive measures we try to take. If you don't change the economic model, uh, it's really fighting uphill.
Mm, mm. Mind you, to recover from this dilemma that we're in is a massive job. And it's going to take a lot more people than there are people on the land to restore the forests
Yeah,
or the oceans, to restore the oceans. Um, we're going to need all hands on deck. And, if we can get the money together, I mean, the humans have used two tools with great effect at changing planet Earth. We've stripped it of its forests. And how have we done that? We've done that through stone axes originally, but more importantly, fire.
yeah,
Each year, we burn an area the size of India globally. We burn that area to stop the forest coming back, to kill the old dead grass, and to kill the ticks while we're at it, just for the animals to graze. But and of course, to deforest, it's no easy task. I mean, if you clear fell even to get the timber out, if you left it alone, that would become forest once
yeah.
more.
right,
Clear felling is not deforestation. Deforestation is getting in there with your plows, with your big equipment, with your fire,
yeah,
and pushing them up, burning them again, 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 and then maybe even uh, uh, plowing the soil.
right,
That's the last thing. Forests don't come back from that.
Yeah.
But 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 for the other if you call it superpower that we have to maintain the landscape, and Scotland's classic for this.
Yeah.
Um, the English divided up Scotland and gave it to their supporters years ago. Scotland used to be called Caledonia, which means forest
Exactly.
in Roman times. So the Romans saw it as a forest. In fact, it was a bit of a wilderness, so they didn't go there much.
right.
But the English conquered it, divided it up, gave it to the peers. And what did they do? They cut down all the trees. They put sheep on it. Now, sheep
Exactly. I
are.
know. I know. We are in the middle of sheep farming country right here, right now, surrounded, and we keep saying if they took all the sheep away, the forest would come back. But
Yes.
Bill and I were teaching up right up in the Scottish Highlands, beautiful Allerdale wilderness. It's 23,000 acres of wild forest. And we were hopeful of moving up there, but it didn't work out because they wanted to keep venison on the menu. We passed on that. But yeah, if we took all the sheep away here, I mean, in Scotland too, everywhere you look, and people will say, yeah, but it's lovely to see them enjoying their life. Oh my lordy, lordy. Well, we got to finish on a positive note here, right? So with the massive planting of trees, right? How long, Gerald, do you think a significant change would take place? Massive planting of trees. I know because we're a long way away from removing animals, right? So we've got to look at what's the other options right now.
Yeah. Well, in fact, the forest will come back. You look at Chernobyl.
Yeah,
Right.
I
exactly.
saw a photo taken a decade ago, and it's almost all forest again. What happens is that nature is relentless, honestly, relentless. So if we stop burning and pull off the grazing animals, particularly sheep and goats,
Hmm.
the forests will come back. So we don't have to do a thing. All we need to do is fence out those animals initially
Yeah.
and stop burning. You see studies like even in the centre of Australia where there's not it's semi-arid, so there's not much vegetation. But you see long-term experiments like exclusion zones where they've excluded grazing, they've excluded fire, and they have a graded track around it that they maintain. It's actually come back as forest within that exclusion zone beautifully.
Yeah.
But all around is just grassland if there is grass,
Right.
depending on the drought. So, yeah, it's going to need a lot of people on the ground, fences to keep the animals out, and firefighters to keep the fire away.
We're ready. We're ready to rock, aren't we, Bill Tara? Along with Gerard. We could talk to you forever, but we're just about out of time. Bill, have you got any other questions? Because it's
No,
been
I think it's great.
fascinating.
That's just the work that you're doing is going to be so inspiring for a lot of people because there's so much lack of clarity around
Yeah.
these issues, and I think that it's just another one of the steps of connecting the dots.
Hmm.
If it's just fossil fuels, how do we solve that? I mean, you can't just solve that, right, as an isolated thing. It has to be
Hmm.
done by other changes in our behaviors and our buying patterns and, how we communicate what we do to other people.
I mean, most of the world that we feel is still wrapped in comfort, convenience, complacency. And no matter how many alarms are going off and ringing, and the evidence is everywhere about diet and health, global warming and everything. But the urgency often gets just drowned by inertia, denial, or short-term priorities. And we need what happened to the warrior spirit of humans? I think about the Vikings, carrying boats around the world. Where did the warrior spirit go? Now people are like, oh, I want my yum yum, right? So we need to find all these warrior people and get this happening. Gerard, we love you. We love you for your work. We love you as a dear friend. And we might get back to Australia one day, the next time you're here in the UK, whoever meets first, we will get together and put the world to right.
It's a great
Lovely
pleasure.
talking to
Thank
you.
you. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you, Bill. Thank you,
Thank
Marlene.
you.
Okay, well, thank you so much for your great work, and we'll speak again soon.